All right, so we are now only 48 hours away from the polls closing and us getting the results in the next German election. The final polls have come out. We're going to go ahead and go over those polls today, look at the likely coalitions of what might happen, because election night is going to be maybe a little bit of a mess, maybe not. We'll see, because there are a number of parties right on the cusp of 5%, and we'll see how that looks. So we're going to go ahead, look at the polls, look at the projections, and figure out what's going on. Because on election day, usually after the exit polls come out and everything, they have a leaders post debate where we can kind of start getting an idea of who actually might be forming coalitions with whom. All right, so let's go ahead and delve into the data. Now, before we get into data, my name is Dave Trotter. I have a master's degree in political science from McGill University, focusing on Canadian elections and voting behavior. So this is right up my alley. If you're interested in international elections, Canadian elections, American elections, please go ahead and subscribe. Click the bell so you're informed about the videos. I also have a Patreon if you'd like to help out there. I also do a Substack as well. And you can also join this channel down below. Everything is down below this video. Any help is greatly appreciated, but even just subscribing helps a lot. So thank you, and let's go ahead and get to the data. All right, so let's go ahead and delve into the data. And today we're going to be looking at a website called Politpro, which I came across a few days ago. A great website that gives us information about the latest polls, not just in Germany, but in a number of other places, and also breaks down what they think the likelihood of, let's say in the case of this, what the German parliament will look like based on what these polls say. They also have an aggregate that will go over at the end, but this will show us how many different scenarios we actually have. So it's a really good site. Go ahead and check them out. But just a reminder, in Germany, we had the constituency level seats and what we call the list seats. It's like, I don't want to really say it's proportional representation, but it is proportional representation. The constituency seats are more about who is elected, like the individual person, is instead of like who the party is. At the end of the day, the whole idea with the German elections, as they want to have the representation in the Bundestag, they want to make sure that it is similar to the list. Now, of course, you'll have smaller parties pulled out if they don't meet a 5% threshold, which means you might have a party like the Green Party actually win 18% of the list vote, but then get 21% of the seats because those 5%, those parties under 5% get pulled out. So let's go ahead and start with the YouGov poll and see what they have. So as you can see in our most recent YouGov poll, we have, and all of these are the last polls, so there's not going to be any other polls. So these are the final polls that we have. So as we can see, and this is a trend we are seeing a bit, we see the CDU, CSU at 29%. We see the AfD at 20, the SPD at 16, the Greens at 13, Die Linke at 8, and Sarah Wagenknecht's group at 5. So the Free Democrats, and we're going to see this in a lot of polls, are under 5%. So that means they would be outside of the threshold. And then we have other parties here. So that means that a good 9%, according to the YouGov poll, can be pulled out when we do the proportional representation. But it also means that proportional representation is going to have a lot more parties in it. So let's go down to the projected seats in Parliament based on the YouGov poll. And as you can see here, you can see how many seats they project and then what the coalition can be like if we add those, what percentage. I think with what we're seeing right now, depending on if those parties can stay in, we're really looking at a Kenya coalition. So what is a Kenya coalition? That is this one. It is the Christian Democrats, the Social Democrats, and the Green Party, okay? This is looking more and more. Now, if we look at the YouGov projection, this is basically saying if you do have a Kenya coalition, you basically have 63% of all members. So this would easily get them over the percentage that they need. Now, if we look at the CDU, Social Democrats, and Sarah Wagenknecht Party, that would be 54%. Of course, this one, which is not going to happen, is the Christian Democrats with the Alternative for Germany group. That would give them 54%, but that coalition's not going to happen. But this becomes interesting now. You have the CDU, the Greens, and Sarah Wagenknecht's party at 51.6% of the seats based on this YouGov poll. Could that be something? Possibly. Now, down here, they do have the Green and the Christian Democrats, but we're going to be focusing on this number a lot as well, which is the Grand Coalition, the CDU, CSU, along with Social Democrats. So you can see in their projection using the YouGov poll, they would be slightly under a majority of the seats. This would just not be enough, just the slightest of hairs to form government. So this brings up another point too, and it came from the YouGov poll. I'm going to put it up on the screen right now, that if we look at the people who voted for the Free Democrats in the last election, we can see that how their votes are distributing this time are kind of different. We see many of them are voting for the Christian Democrats, and then there's quite a bit of a drop after that, which means with the Free Democrats here at 4%, could you maybe see a percentage or two come off the Free Democrats in strategic voting that would put a grand coalition forward? I don't think that would happen because the Free Democrats are so small, but it is a possibility. So this is what we're looking at with the YouGov poll. So let's go ahead and go to the, Forschungsgruppe Wahlen poll. I am not German. I am an American, even though I have German blood in me, something I didn't know until I had a DNA test done a year and a half ago. But anyways, let's go ahead and look at them. Again, we see another poll where the Christian Democrats are under 30% at 28%. It's a 2% drop, I think, in the last poll. We see Alternative for Germany at 21%, Social Democrats at 16%, the Greens at 14%, the Linke at 8%. But now this is what's important. You see Sarah Wagenknecht's party down under 5% at 4.5%, as well as the Free Democrats. So now you're talking about a larger percentage of people of that vote being taken out, which means the distribution would be different. So this situation, you can see if that happens and those numbers stay that way, you see that we do have enough, barely, for a grand coalition. But a Kenya coalition would be, because this is 50.6%, a Kenya coalition would also be a possibility. So just the Christian Democrats and the Green, they are just slightly under it. So in this scenario, we could possibly see a grand coalition. And if we don't see a grand coalition, we would definitely see a Kenya coalition, which Kenya coalition, again, Christian Democrats, Social Democrats, and the Green Party. They do a lot of their coalition names based off of flags, based off of traffic light, the traffic light coalition, the one that we just had, and so on. So the INSA or INSA poll here, we see that the Union is at 30% and the SPD at 15%. The Alternative for Germany is at 21%, the Greens at 13%, the Linke at 7%, but Sarah Wagenknecht at 5%. So that means they would make the threshold according to this poll, which means it would be distributed more amongst those. Now let's look at the possible coalitions that Politpro actually has. Now, here we go. The first one is the Kenya coalition at 63.8% of the seats. Unless on election night we see the Social Democrats and the Union bump up maybe 2% for each party. Otherwise, we're going to see a Kenya coalition. But a grand coalition could be possible in those scenarios. Of course, the AfD with Christian Democrats. Then we do have the Sarah Wagenknecht party working with the Grand Coalition partners. That would get them over. But what's interesting here is you also have the Green Party with the Sarah Wagenknecht party working with the Christian Democrats to get them over. It would be interesting if these would even work in a coalition. It's possible that they could. I'm not entirely sure. So let's go ahead and go over to the GMS poll that I believe came out 2 days ago. This one has the Christian Democrats up a little bit more. So 31%, the Alternative for Germany 20%, and the Social Democrats 15%, with the Greens at 13%, the Linke at 6%, but then the rest of the parties are under 5%. So that means more of a distribution. And with the Union at 31%, this might mean a grand coalition is possible. Let's look at what they have down here. Yes, this poll that they have, if these numbers are actually a representation of what we see on election nights, these numbers are more than enough to have a grand coalition. So this is a possibility. It's also enough to have the Greens work with the Christian Democrats for a coalition as well. So you can see by taking those extra parties out, and remember on this one, the Linke is only at 6%. That's the lowest that we really see them. If they stay this low, then honestly, the Christian Democrats can create any two-party coalition that they want. Okay, so this one's a very interesting poll. Let's go over to the next one, which is the Ipsos poll. And we do see the Christian Democrats at 31%, AFD. This is very similar to the poll that we just saw. The Greens at 13%, Die Linke at 7%. But then again, we see Sarah Wagenknecht and the Free Democrats down under 5%. They would stay under 5%. We would have enough seats for both a grand coalition and a coalition with the Green Party. So, of course, the AFD would be a coalition as well. But we're seeing in some of these, a grand coalition is still possible depending on who is taken out. And it's seeming as if those parties are taken out, the Free Democrats and Sarah Wagenknecht, grand coalition is actually very likely. Well, I'm not going to say very likely, but likely. Now, this is a poll, the Allensbach poll, which is more favorable to the Union. However, I will say the one thing that I like about their polls is they actually do in-person polling, not phones, not online panels, anything like that, in-person vote polling, which I think is the most accurate, something you just do not see done nowadays. Okay, so what we have here, sorry, I'm scrolling up. What we have here is the Union at 32%. People have complained that they do favor the Union. We have Alternative for Germany at 20%, the SPD at 14.5%, the Greens at 12%, Die Linke at 7.5%, and then again, we have the other two parties below the 5% threshold. That's going to be the story of the day. The story of the day on Sunday when we watch the election is going to be, are these two parties under 5%? If they are, I think it changes everything. Now, of course, we go here again. We can see the Grand Coalition would hold under this polling, and the Greens working with the Christian Democrats would also hold under this polling. And then I think this might be our last poll before we get to the aggregate, the Forza poll, which again, we have the Christian Democrats under 30% at 29%. The AFD is a little higher at 21%. We've seen them kind of dip a little bit into 20% range. We're not seeing them at the 22 or 23 we saw them before. That might make a difference. The Social Democrats at 15%, the Greens at 13%, Die Linke at 8%. So this isn't just, so I mentioned the YouGov poll that had Die Linke at 9% a few days ago. It's not just YouGov that is noticing this upward trend, but in all fairness, if you look at Die Linke in the last election in 2021, I think they were polling at 7%, 7%, but they went under the 5% threshold, but they had 3 constituencies that would allow them to do this. And that's another thing I want to mention. The Free Democrats and the Sarah Wagenknecht Party aren't expected to have the 3 constituencies. And thank you very much for the people who reminded me that that rule is still in effect. I thought that it had been taken out, but you reminded me that the court said that that was unconstitutional. So thank you for all of those who reminded me. Now, this one is different because we do have the Free Democrats at 5%, which means they make the threshold and the Sarah Wagenknecht Party does not. This is the only poll that we see like this, giving us this actual scenario. So this means the seat distribution would be quite different look at all the ones that we got here. Okay. Now, obviously we have the Kenya coalition here. That would be 62.7, no doubt about it. But now you're talking about, now if you're the Christian Democrats, and this scenario happens, that the Free Democrats get in, Sarah Wagenknecht does not, and even at 29% for the Christian Democrats, you're looking at, it would be more advantageous to us to be working with the Free Democrats, okay? Because if we're talking about breaking up a coalition, the Social Democrats in a grand coalition, not a grand coalition, but a 3-way coalition with the Christian Democrats and the Social Democrats in it together. If they work with one other party, you kind of can have the Social Democrats pull the rug out whenever they want to, call a new election. They think it might help. By having the social or Free Democrats in there, I think it gives them a little bit more stability. Now, according to this, they can just say, hey, we're not going to work with Social Democrats. We're going to go ahead and work with the Greens and the Free Democrats. So this would be the Jamaica Coalition. I would love to see the Jamaica Coalition, just so I can hear people talk about the Jamaica Coalition and see the Jamaican flag again. This is a possibility. We might be in Jamaica Coalition territory because, okay, if you can't get a grand coalition, which this shows, and you have to, and the only way you're working with two parties, according to this poll, is working with the AFD. This means you're going to have to bring in another party. Now, obviously, you can do the Kenya coalition. Now, if one of these two parties pull out, you still have enough. Would that trigger a confidence vote with a little slim margin of majority? Maybe, maybe not. As we see the last time, doesn't really matter. But if you're the Christian Democrats, you might ask yourself, who is it going to be easier to control? Is it going to be the Greens or is it going to be the Social Democrats? Now, the Free Democrats will agree with us on a lot of stuff. So we can work with the Free Democrats. That's fine. They're going to work with us on a lot of stuff. But if you're the Christian Democrats, you might be saying, well, if we're going through these cycles of elections, it's going to be the Social Democrats that at any time when they think they got the polling numbers to take back government, they're going to be the ones that pull the rug. And it's like I'm talking about crypto meme coins now. They're going to be the ones that pull the rug and say, we're going to call a new election, vote of no confidence. They'll get the AFD on their side because the AFD knows they'll probably get more votes. And probably others that probably get the Greens on their side as well. Whereas if you're the Greens, on the other hand, you know there's not really a benefit of you pulling the rug on a coalition because you know you're not going to form the next government. You're not going to be in a plurality situation where you're going to form the next government. So therefore, working with the Christian Democrats makes sense for the Greens. And now for the Christian Democrats, working with the Greens makes sense because it creates stability, because the Free Democrats will just kind of do what the Christian Democrats want. So I think if we do look at this Forza poll being close to what we should expect on election night, I think we are in a position that a Jamaica coalition is actually the most likely coalition, even more than what we have here with the Kenya coalition. I don't think it would be the same as Kenya coalition. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the Politburo numbers as far as the aggregates of the polls. So this is what they have. I'd have to look at their aggregates and try to figure out how they determine them. And what we got here in their coalition, in their aggregate, is they do seem to believe in their aggregate that a grand coalition is possible. They even have here a green-black coalition, which is possible. I'm surprised they don't have any other coalition. So I don't know why they don't have the Kenya coalition, even though they have all three parties that would be part of the Kenya coalition there. So yeah, I mean, this one says that there are a number of opportunities, but these are aggregates of polls. Of course, they're probably having some sort of deviation within those, have a 95% confidence interval in order to have seat distribution. There's probably a lot going on there. I'd have to look at those. But want to talk about the German elections. They are coming up in 2 days, 48 hours from now. We'll have an idea. The whole thing comes down to Free Democrats, Sarah Wagenknecht's party. Maybe Die Linke. I think they're in a safe position now. I think they're going to get their 5%. But if two of those three parties are in, then it's going to be for an interesting night, and it's going to be for an interesting battle. And if when I'm in Germany, because I'll be there 2 days in Berlin, 2 days in Munich, if stuff gets interesting, maybe because I'm going to be spending time, not far away from the center of Berlin. I'm going to be staying off of Alexanderplatz. Maybe there's some protest or maybe there's some things going around. I'll make sure to take a video of that. All right. Well, thank you all very much. That's all I wanted to talk about. I got some Canadian election stuff coming up soon. Talk to you all later. Bye-bye.